The script lay open on my kitchen table, my handwriting filling every line, but I'd never written a single word of it. My hands shook as I turned the pages, recognizing phrases I'd spoken yesterday, last week, 20 years ago. Each conversation, each decision I thought was mind-scripted, planned, orchestrated. The silence I'd kept for 2 decades hadn't been my choice at all. It had been written for me, and I'd performed it perfectly without ever knowing I was on stage. That morning started like any other in my carefully controlled life. Coffee at 6:30, shower at 7. The same routine I'd followed since moving back to Portland after Thomas died. Or at least, that's the story I'd told myself. The narrative I'd lived inside for so long that the truth had become just another memory I couldn't quite trust. But finding that notebook changed everything. It revealed that my silence hadn't protected anyone. It had only served someone else's script, someone else's truth, someone else's control over my identity. The discovery happened by accident, the way most life-shattering revelations do. I'd been cleaning out the attic, finally ready to sort through the boxes I'd avoided since selling the house. My daughter Emma had been pushing me to declutter, to let go of the past. "You can't move forward when you're drowning in old memories, Mom," she'd said, not knowing how right she was, not understanding that some memories weren't even real. The notebook had been tucked inside a box, labeled Tax Returns 1995-2000. Innocent enough, forgettable enough, exactly where someone would hide something they never wanted found, but couldn't bring themselves to destroy. The leather cover had aged to a deep brown, the pages yellowed but intact. At first, I thought it was one of Thomas's journals. He'd always been writing, always documenting, always observing. But the handwriting was wrong. Too neat, too deliberate, too familiar in a way that made my stomach turn before my mind caught up. I opened it, expecting nothing. Financial records, maybe, old grocery lists, the mundane debris of a life lived. Instead, I found myself reading my own future, written in past tense. September 15th, 2004. She'll discover the affair today. Plant the receipt in his jacket pocket, the one from the restaurant she mentioned wanting to try. She'll confront him at dinner. He'll deny it first, important for authenticity, then break down. She'll threaten to leave. This is when you introduce the pregnancy angle. She'll stay silent for the child. My legs gave out. I sat hard on the dusty attic floor, surrounded by boxes of fabricated memories, reading about the worst day of my life, as if it were a scene from a play. The receipt. God, I remembered that receipt. Chez Laurent, the French place downtown I'd circled in the newspaper, planning to suggest it for our anniversary. Finding it in Thomas's pocket with another woman's lipstick on the back. Jessica, her number scrawled like a taunt. The confrontation that followed, his tears, his promises, and then the positive pregnancy test that changed everything. Except I'd never been pregnant. Not then. The test had been fake somehow, the entire scenario crafted to keep me in line, to maintain my silence about something. But what? What had I known that required such elaborate control? I turned the pages with trembling fingers, watching my life unfold in someone else's handwriting. Every major decision, every turning point, scripted and staged. The job offer in Seattle I'd turned down because Thomas suddenly got promoted. The friendship with Sarah that ended when she betrayed me by telling Thomas about my doubts. The miscarriage that never happened, that kept me bedridden and isolated for weeks. dependent on Thomas for everything, while he fed me pills that made me foggy, compliant, grateful for his care. November 3rd, 2005. Increase the dosage slightly. She's starting to question the gaps in her memory. Dr. Morrison will confirm chronic fatigue syndrome at next week's appointment. She trusts him. Dr. Morrison. I'd seen him for 15 years. Chronic fatigue, he'd said. Stress-induced memory issues. Completely normal for women my age. Take these pills. Get more rest. Don't push yourself to remember things that don't matter anyway. I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? He had diplomas on his walls, a gentle voice, a way of making me feel heard, even while he dismissed my concerns. The notebook contained more than just my scheduled life. There were observations, notes about my reactions, adjustments to the plan. She's stronger than anticipated. The guilt about her mother isn't working as well as projected. Need to introduce the letters. The letters. Christ, the letters. They'd appeared 2 years after my mother died, supposedly hidden in her attic, full of disappointment about my choices, my silence during her illness, my failure to be the daughter she'd wanted. I'd carried that guilt like a stone in my chest, let it shape every decision, every relationship. But the handwriting in those letters, I could see it now. Compare it to the notebook. The same careful loops, the same measured pressure on the page. My mother had never written those letters. Someone else had. Someone who knew exactly which wounds to press, which fears to exploit. But who? And why? Thomas had been dead for 3 years. Car accident on Highway 26, the police said. Suspicious timing, I thought now. Reading entries that suggested his usefulness had expired. He's becoming a liability. His drinking makes him unpredictable. She's stabilized enough to maintain the pattern without him. The accident needs to happen before the audit. The audit. Thomas had worked for a development firm, something with government contracts. I'd never paid attention to the details. Another part of the script, I realized. The dutiful wife who didn't ask questions, didn't involve herself in business matters. But there had been an audit scheduled. Investigators coming to review 5 years of contracts. The accident happened 3 days before they arrived. I forced myself to keep reading, even as each page dismantled another piece of my identity. The promotion I'd thought I'd earned, orchestrated by someone who needed me in that position. The neighbor who'd become my best friend after Thomas died, assigned to watch me, report on my emotional state, ensure I stayed within the boundaries of my scripted existence. Patricia. God, Patricia. She'd held me while I sobbed, made me dinners when I couldn't function, listened to my stories about Thomas, about my regrets, about the life I wished I'd lived. All while reporting back to someone, adjusting my medication when needed, keeping me contained in my grief. She mentioned wanting to travel. Discourage this. Travel introduces too many variables. Suggest local activities instead. Book club, gardening, controlled social interactions. I'd joined a book club, started a garden, stayed within a 5-mile radius of my house for 3 years, convinced I was healing, finding myself, building a new life on my own terms. The irony made me want to scream, but even that impulse felt suspect now. How many of my emotions were real? How many had been chemically induced, carefully calibrated to keep me docile? The notebook ended abruptly in 2008. The final entry dated just weeks after Thomas's death. Phase 2 complete. Subject has been successfully repositioned. Memory gaps are permanent. Identity reformation 90% successful. She believes her silence is a choice, her life her own. Minimal maintenance required moving forward. Patricia will monitor and report monthly. Phase 2, which meant there had been a Phase 1, something before the life I remembered, the identity I'd worn like skin for 20 years. But what? Who had I been before they rebuilt me into this quiet, compliant woman who stayed silent, who never questioned, who lived within the narrow boundaries of a carefully constructed existence? I sat in that attic for hours, reading and rereading, trying to piece together the truth from the lies. The sun moved across the dusty windows, casting shadows that shifted like memories I couldn't quite grasp. Somewhere in this notebook was the answer to why someone had stolen my life, my voice, my identity. But finding it meant admitting that everything I believed about myself was false. My phone buzzed. Patricia, checking in like she always did. "Haven't heard from you today, sweetie. Everything okay?" For 20 years, I'd answered her immediately, grateful for her concern. Now I stared at the message, seeing it for what it was: surveillance, control, a leash I'd mistaken for love. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. One wrong word, and she'd know something had changed. One sign of awareness, and whoever controlled this script might decide I needed to be written out entirely. I typed slowly, carefully, playing the role I'd apparently perfected without knowing it. Just cleaning the attic. Found some old photos. Feeling nostalgic. 3 dots appeared immediately. She was typing, probably reporting to someone that I was in the attic, accessing memories that should have been destroyed. I could picture her in her kitchen next door, the one with the perfect view of my house, where she could monitor my comings and goings while seeming like nothing more than a concerned friend. "Don't get lost in the past, honey. Want me to come help?" "No, I'm fine. Just need some time alone with the memories." I waited until I saw her read receipt, then set the phone aside. Through the attic window, I watched her house. The curtains in her kitchen moved slightly. She was watching me back, making sure I stayed where I said I was. 20 years of this. 20 years of being observed, managed, handled like an unpredictable asset that might malfunction at any moment. The notebook lay in my lap, its weight both negligible and crushing. I needed to understand more, but I also needed to be smart. If they, whoever they were, realized I'd found this, that I knew what they'd done, what would happen? The same thing that happened to Thomas when he became a liability? I photographed each page with my phone, hands steady now, despite the rage building in my chest. Then I placed the notebook back exactly where I'd found it, buried under tax returns that no one would ever examine. Let them think their secret was safe. Let them believe I was still the obedient marionette they'd created. Back in my kitchen, I made tea with the same mechanical precision I'd used for years, aware now that even these small rituals might have been programmed into me. The mug warmed my hands, real sensation, real heat. I had to believe some things were still true, still mine, or I'd lose my mind entirely. I pulled up the photos on my phone, zooming in on entries I'd only skimmed in the attic. There were names I didn't recognize, references to events I couldn't recall. Subject exhibited unusual resistance to Protocol 7. Increased benzodiazepine dosage, authorized by Dr. Morrison. Note: she mentioned dreams about water, drowning, possible memory breakthrough from the incident. Monitor closely. The incident! What incident? I'd always been afraid of water, couldn't explain why. Thomas used to tease me about it, gently, the way loving husbands do. or the way handlers manage their assets' quirks. But drowning dreams, I'd had those for years. Dark water, pressure in my lungs, someone holding me under. Doctor, Morrison had prescribed stronger sleeping pills, said trauma from childhood sometimes surfaced in dreams, nothing to worry about. My phone rang. Emma. Mom? Patricia called me. She said you sounded strange. Of course she had. The surveillance network extended to my own daughter. My hand tightened on the phone, but I forced my voice to remain steady, worn. The voice of a grieving widow sorting through memories. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just found some of your father's things. It's harder than I expected. Do you want me to come over? I can leave work early. Emma worked at a marketing firm downtown. Or at least, that's what I'd always believed. Now I wondered if that was real. If she was real. If anything about our relationship existed outside someone else's design. The thought that they might have scripted my own daughter made me physically ill. No, honey. I need to do this alone. You understand? A pause. I could hear her typing, probably messaging Patricia, confirming the widow was stable, contained, performing grief within acceptable parameters. Okay, but call if you need anything. And Mom? Maybe it's time to think about talking to someone. Dr. Morrison mentioned he hasn't seen you in months. Dr. Morrison. Always Dr. Morrison, waiting in the wings with his prescriptions and his gentle gaslighting. I made a non-committal sound and ended the call. The photographs revealed more as I studied them. Financial transfers, account numbers, references to a company called Geometric Solutions. Thomas had never worked for a company with that name, but the amounts were staggering. Millions moved through accounts connected to my social security number, my signature forged on documents I'd never seen. Phase 1 success rate, 73%. Subject's previous identity successfully suppressed. Recommend advancement to Phase 2, pending final memory wipe. Previous identity, memory wipe. The words should have sounded like science fiction, but the evidence was too detailed, too mundane in its evil to be fantasy. Meeting notes, drug schedules, psychological profiles that dissected my personality like a lab specimen. I found myself in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. 63 years old, gray hair I'd stopped coloring after Thomas died, lines around my eyes that deepened when I smiled, which wasn't often. But who was I really? The woman in the mirror had a history, memories, a life story. But if that story was fiction, then who was looking back at me? My hands went to my scalp, fingers searching for scars, evidence of surgery, something to explain how they'd stolen my memories. Nothing. Just the familiar territory of my own skull, keeping its secrets locked inside. The doorbell rang. Patricia stood on my porch, holding a casserole dish, her concerned friend mask perfectly in place. She'd changed from her morning clothes into what she called her comfort outfit, soft sweater, worn jeans, the uniform of a caring neighbor. I know you said you wanted to be alone, she said, but I couldn't help myself. You need to eat. I let her in because refusing would have been out of character. The scripted me always appreciated Patricia's gestures, always invited her in for tea, always confided just enough to seem authentic without ever saying anything that mattered. She moved through my kitchen with familiar ease, heating the oven, finding plates, performing the choreography of friendship we'd danced for 3 years. I watched her hands, looking for tells, for the moment when she might slip something into my food, my drink. But she was too good, too practiced, Or maybe the drugs were already in the casserole, pre-mixed in her kitchen while she watched me through her window. "You look tired," she said, studying my face with what seemed like genuine concern. "Have you been taking your vitamins?" The vitamins. Of course. Special supplements Patricia had recommended, ordered from a company that didn't exist when I searched for it online. I'd been taking them religiously, trusting her advice, grateful for her care. "Every day," I lied. She relaxed slightly. "Good. You know how worried I get about you." We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd found the script that morning, and ate casserole that might have been poisoned while she chattered about neighborhood gossip, her book club, the vacation she was planning to Arizona. Normal conversation, except now I heard the probing underneath, the careful questions designed to assess my mental state. "Emma seems stressed about work," she said casually. "Has she mentioned anything to you?" A test. Emma hadn't said anything about work stress, but Patricia would know that. She was checking if I'd make something up, if I was hiding anything, if my behavior had changed. "She hasn't said much. You know how she is, always trying to protect me." Patricia nodded, satisfied. "She's a good daughter. You raised her well." Did I? Or had they raised her, shaped her into another watcher, another bar in my cage? The thought made the casserole turn to ash in my mouth. After she left, I threw up everything I'd eaten, then searched the house for the vitamins. The bottle looked legitimate, professional label, FDA-approved appearance. But the pills inside? I crushed one with a spoon and tasted the powder. Bitter, chemical, nothing like the vitamins they claimed to be. I flushed them all, then refilled the bottle with similar-looking supplements from a grocery store bottle, keeping count so I could maintain the illusion of taking them. Every small rebellion mattered now, every tiny reclamation of control. That night, I sat with the photographed pages, building a timeline. The notebook started in 2002, but references went back further. 1999. Subject acquired. 2000. Initial resistance higher than expected. 2001. Breakthrough achieved using water therapy. Water therapy. Those drowning dreams weren't dreams at all, but memories trying to surface through whatever they'd done to suppress them. Someone had held me underwater, probably repeatedly, until I broke. Until they could rebuild me into someone else. But why me? What made me worth this elaborate effort? I found a partial answer in an entry from early 2002. Subject's testimony has been successfully neutralized. Without her memories of the Riverside Project, prosecution cannot proceed. Recommend maintaining suppression indefinitely. Riverside. The word triggered something. A flutter of recognition quickly smothered by mental fog. I'd known something about Riverside. Something important enough that they'd erased my entire identity to keep me from revealing it. My laptop sat closed on the coffee table. They certainly monitored my internet usage, tracked every search, every email. But I needed to know what Riverside was, what had been worth stealing my life to hide. I opened a private browser, knowing it wasn't really private, but hoping it might buy me a few minutes before they noticed. Typed Riverside Project Portland 2001. The first results were nothing. A school renovation, a park development. But on the third page, I found an archived news article from 2001. Federal investigation launched into Riverside Development Deal Key. Witness missing. The article loaded slowly, each line of text another piece of my stolen past, emerging from digital darkness. Federal investigators examining suspicious contracts worth $400 million. A development project that displaced 300 families. Environmental violations covered up with falsified reports. And at the center of it all, Geometric Solutions, the company I'd seen referenced in the notebook. The key witness, the article said, was a whistleblower from inside the company who'd compiled evidence of fraud, bribery, and potential manslaughter after 2 workers died from exposure to undisclosed toxic waste. The witness had disappeared 3 days before the grand jury testimony. The witness was unnamed, protected by federal security that had obviously failed. But I knew with the same certainty that I knew my own hands, my own heartbeat. That witness had been me. I scrolled through related articles, my erased life slowly taking shape in news archives and court documents. Senior accountant at Geometric Solutions. Access to financial records. Scheduled to testify in November 2001. Then nothing. The investigation collapsed without its star witness. Cases dismissed. The executives I'd been preparing to testify against had walked free. One name appeared repeatedly. Mitchell Vance, CEO of Geometric Solutions. I clicked on an image from a charity gala in 2003. There he stood in his tuxedo, champagne in hand, smiling at the camera. And beside him, her hand on his arm, stood Patricia. Younger, blonde, then instead of gray, but unmistakably Patricia. The woman who'd been watching me for 3 years, who'd comforted me after Thomas's death, who'd been drugging me with fake vitamins and reporting on my every move. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. She wasn't just surveillance. She was connected to the very people who'd stolen my identity. Maybe she was Vance's wife, sister, daughter. It didn't matter. What mattered was that she'd been placed next door to watch me, to ensure I never remembered what I'd known about Riverside. But they'd made a mistake, leaving that notebook where I could find it. Or had they? The thought chilled me. What if finding it had been part of the script too? What if they wanted me to know? Wanted me to confront the truth for some reason I couldn't yet understand? I moved to the window, staring at Patricia's house. The lights were on in her study. The one she'd told me was where she worked on her novel. Had she ever written a word of fiction that wasn't about me? Or did she sit there every night, typing up reports about my behavior, my conversations, my slow dissolution into the person they'd created? My phone buzzed. Emma again. Mom, are you awake? Patricia said you weren't answering your door. I looked at the front door. I hadn't heard any knock, but then again, I'd been lost in articles about my former life. Or Patricia was lying, testing Emma's response, seeing how quickly she'd check on me. I was in the shower. Tell Patricia I'm fine. Maybe I should come stay with you for a few days. No. Too sharp. I softened my tone. No, sweetheart. I'm okay. Just processing some things. Processing what? The question felt loaded, but maybe I was paranoid now, seeing conspiracy in every word. Then again, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not watching you. Just, your father. The anniversary is coming up. It wasn't, but Emma wouldn't remember the exact date. People never did unless it was their own loss, their own grief. Sure enough, she made sympathetic noises and promised to call tomorrow. After she hung up, I pulled out a paper map of Portland from a drawer. Old-fashioned, no digital trail. The Riverside development would have been somewhere along the river, obviously. But where? I traced the waterfront with my finger, trying to trigger any dormant memories. Terminal 1. The name surfaced suddenly, like a bubble of air from deep water. Terminal 1 had been the location, an old industrial site being converted to luxury condos. 2 workers had died there when they broke through a sealed basement and released something toxic waste from the previous factory, chemicals that had been illegally contained instead of properly disposed. I'd seen the real environmental reports. I'd copied financial records showing the cover-up, the bribes to inspectors, the payments to the workers' families to buy their silence. I'd had evidence that would have sent a dozen executives to prison. And then I'd disappeared, become someone else, a quiet woman named... What? What was my name now? The question seemed absurd, but suddenly I couldn't remember anyone using my actual name. Emma called me Mom. Patricia called me Honey, sweetie dear. The notebook had only referred to me as subject or she. My driver's license was in my purse. Helen Morrison. The last name made me sick. Dr. Morrison's name, my handler's name, branded onto my identity like ownership. But Helen? Had that been my name before? Or was it another invention? I returned to the notebook photos, searching for any reference to my original identity. Nothing direct, but there were hints. Subject's muscle memory remains intact. Keep her away from keyboards when possible. Her typing speed could trigger questions. I'd been a fast typist. That's why I'd been valuable at geometric solutions. I could process massive amounts of data, create reports, compile evidence efficiently. They couldn't erase physical skills, only memories. She tried to call the number again, the 503 prefix. We've kept it disconnected, but she remembers something. 503 was Portland's area code. But what number? I closed my eyes, let my fingers move to imaginary phone buttons, muscle memory taking over. 503-555-7829. The numbers came automatically, meaninglessly. I grabbed my phone, hesitated. They monitored everything, but I had to know. I dialed. It rang once, twice. Then a recorded message. The number you have reached has been disconnected for 23 years. 23 years? Since 2001, since I disappeared. If you're trying to reach Rebecca Chen, please contact Portland Federal Courthouse, extension 4455. Rebecca Chen. The name hit me like cold water, like drowning, like surfacing all at once. Rebecca Chen, who'd worn business suits and worked late documenting fraud. Rebecca Chen, who'd believed in justice. Rebecca Chen, who'd trusted federal protection that had sold her to the people she was testifying against. I was Rebecca Chen. Or I had been, before they'd held me underwater, until she died and Helen Morrison was born. The realization should have been liberating, but it felt like another loss. Rebecca Chen had had a life, a purpose, a voice that mattered. Helen Morrison was a ghost, a fiction, a 20-year performance of someone else's script. I wanted to scream Rebecca's name, to call everyone, and tell them I'd been found. I'd been here all along, trapped inside someone else's life. But who would believe me? And more importantly, who could I trust? Emma might be innocent, or she might be another handler. Every friend, every acquaintance might be part of the surveillance network. Patricia's porch light turned on. She was coming over. I quickly cleared my browser history, closed the laptop, arranged myself on the couch with a photo album, the grieving widow reviewing memories. By the time she knocked, I was the perfect picture of manageable sorrow. "I saw your lights on," she said, letting herself in with the key I'd given her. The key Helen Morrison had given her. Rebecca Chen would never have been so trusting. "Couldn't sleep," I said, showing her the album. Photos of a life I'd lived but hadn't chosen. Thomas and Helen at their wedding, I couldn't actually remember. Only the story of it I'd been told so many times, it felt like memory. Patricia sat beside me, too close, her perfume cloying. Oh, honey, you two were so happy. Were we? Or was Thomas just another actor in this elaborate theater, playing the husband while reporting on my behavior, adjusting my medication, keeping me contained? The notebook had suggested he'd become unstable, started drinking. Maybe he'd developed a conscience. Maybe he'd started to care about the woman he was controlling. Or maybe he'd just outlived his usefulness. Patricia, I said suddenly, surprising myself. How did we meet? I can't seem to remember. She stiffened almost imperceptibly. Oh, sweetie, that was right after Thomas died. You were in such a state. I found you crying in your garden, remember? We talked about roses. I didn't remember, because it hadn't happened. She'd been inserted into my life at a vulnerable moment, when grief made me malleable, grateful for any kindness. Of course, I lied. The roses. She relaxed, patted my hand. Her fingers were cold. Why don't you take one of your sleeping pills and try to rest? You look exhausted. I will. She waited, watching. She wanted to see me take the pill, ensure I'd be unconscious, unable to cause problems. I stood, went to the kitchen, made a show of taking the medication while palming the pill. I'd gotten good at this deception over the past few hours, my own small revolution. Good girl, Patricia said, and the condescension in those two words made me want to grab the notebook from the attic and shove it in her face. After Patricia left, I spit the pill into the sink and watched it dissolve. 20 years of being a good girl, taking my medication, following the script. Rebecca Chen would never have tolerated this. But Helen Morrison had been designed to tolerate everything. I waited an hour, then crept up to the attic with a flashlight. If they were watching the house, my bedroom light was still on, Helen properly sedated and contained. But Rebecca was awake, searching for more evidence of the life that had been stolen. Behind the box, where I'd found the notebook, there were more boxes I hadn't explored. Thomas's things, or so the labels claimed. But Thomas had been part of the performance, so what else had they hidden here? The first box contained clothes that smelled of his cologne. That particular mixture of sandalwood and tobacco I'd found comforting. Programmed to find comforting, probably. Underneath the clothes, wrapped in an old sweater, I found a digital recorder. My finger hesitated over the play button. Whatever was on this device, Thomas had hidden it. Maybe his conscience had finally won. Maybe he'd recorded evidence before they killed him. His voice filled the dusty attic air, slurred with alcohol, but unmistakably his. March 15th, 2008. Helen Christ, I can't keep calling her that. Rebecca. Her name is Rebecca Chen, and what we've done to her is monstrous. I stopped breathing. Mitchell said it would be temporary, just until the investigation ended. But it's been 7 years. 7 years of watching her take pills that steal her memories. 7 years of pretending to be her husband. 7 years of lying every single day. A pause. The sound of liquid pouring, probably whiskey. She's starting to remember things in her sleep. Says names she shouldn't know. Last night she sat up and said, "Terminal 1 clear as day," then lay back down like nothing happened. I'm supposed to report these breakthroughs, increase her dosage, but I can't do it anymore. Another pause. A door closing in the background. I've been reducing her medications, slowly, so they won't notice. Maybe if she remembers on her own, she can get out, get free, get justice for what they did to her, to us. Because I'm a prisoner too, aren't I? Can't leave, can't stop, can't tell anyone the truth without ending up like those workers at Terminal 1. The recording crackled. I'm going to confront Mitchell. Tell him I want out. He'll probably kill me for it, but at least she'll have a chance. Rebecca deserves a chance to remember who she really is. I loved her, you know. The real her, the one I glimpsed between the medications. The woman who fought back until they broke her. If someone finds this, tell her Thomas was sorry. Tell her that not all of it was a lie. The recording ended. 3 days later, Thomas had died in that car accident. I sat in the darkness, processing his confession. He'd been reducing my medications, trying to free me. His death hadn't been about the audit. It had been about protecting me, giving me a chance to wake up from the constructed dream of Helen Morrison. But I'd grieved him, genuinely grieved the man who'd been my captor, because somewhere in those 7 years of performance, real emotion had grown. Stockholm Syndrome, or just the human need to find connection, even in the darkest circumstances. Either way, the grief was real, even if nothing else had been. Another box. More recordings, these dated earlier. Thomas documenting my progress, his voice clinical, detached. Subject continues to resist identity integration. Recommend increased water therapy sessions. Subject attempted to access a computer today. Claimed she wanted to check email, but her typing pattern suggests muscle memory of report writing. Breakthrough. Subject responded to the name Helen without hesitation. Beginning phase 2 implementation. Then, later recordings where the clinical tone cracked. She made me laugh today. Really laugh. Not part of the script. I can't watch them hurt her anymore. Morrison's treatments are torture with a medical license. She trusts me. God help me. She actually trusts me, and I'm using that trust to destroy her. I turned off the recorder, unable to hear more. Thomas had been both my jailer and, in his twisted way, my protector. The only person in my manufactured life who'd tried to help me, even if he'd been part of creating that life in the first place. In the last box, I found photographs. Not the staged family photos that filled the albums downstairs, but surveillance shots. Rebecca Chen at her desk at Geometric Solutions. Rebecca Chen meeting with federal investigators. Rebecca Chen walking into a safe house that hadn't been safe at all. I studied my former face. Sharper features, eyes that held purpose instead of medication-induced compliance. She looked like someone who would fight, who would risk everything to expose corruption. She looked like someone I wanted to be again. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in plastic, was a flash drive. My hands trembled as I picked it up. This was what Thomas had died trying to protect. This was what they'd erased my identity to hide. I couldn't risk using my laptop. They'd be monitoring it. But there was an old computer in the basement. Thomas's from before he died. Outdated, not connected to the internet. Safe, maybe. The basement was cold, musty, filled with more props from Helen Morrison's false life. Christmas decorations we'd never actually used. Camping gear for trips we'd never taken. The detritus of a marriage that had been nothing but an elaborate prison. The computer took forever to boot up. Windows XP grinding to life. The flash drive contained hundreds of files, financial records, environmental reports, emails between Mitchell Vance and city officials, evidence of bribery, cover-ups, murder. Everything I'd compiled as Rebecca Chen. Everything they thought they'd destroyed when they destroyed me. But Thomas had saved it. his final act of rebellion, his attempt at redemption. One file was labeled, "Read this first, Rebecca." Inside, a letter from Thomas. "If you're reading this, you've remembered who you are, or I'm dead, and you found what I left for you. Either way, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I helped them do to you. Mitchell Vance owns judges, prosecutors, police commissioners. He bought your federal protection detail. That's how they got to you. Agent Sarah Martinez, the one you trusted, she delivered you to Morrison for reprogramming. Patricia is Mitchell's sister. She's been the primary observer since I died. Your daughter, Emma. God, this is hard to write. Emma isn't your daughter. You never had children. She's an actress, recruited fresh from college, trained to play the role. I'm sorry. I know you love her. That love is real, even if she isn't. The evidence on this drive is enough to destroy them all. But you need to be smart. You can't go to local law enforcement. Mitchell owns them. FBI is compromised too. But there's a journalist, Marcus Wade at the Washington Post. He's been investigating geometric solutions for years. He's clean. Trust him. If you're reading this, it means you're strong enough to break free. You were always stronger than they knew. That's why it took so much to break you, and why you never truly broke. Be careful. Be smart. Be Rebecca Chen again. And forgive me, if you can. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Emma wasn't my daughter. The relationship I'd cherished, the one pure thing in Helen Morrison's life, was just another performance. The grief of losing that fiction might have broken me if I hadn't been broken so many times already. But rage is stronger than grief, and I had 20 years of rage compressed into a single moment of clarity. I copied everything onto 3 separate flash drives I found in Thomas's desk. One to hide, one to carry, one to mail to Marcus Wade. Then I climbed back upstairs and prepared for the performance of my life. Not Helen Morrison's life, Rebecca Chen's. At 6 a.m., I called Patricia. "I think I'm having a reaction to the vitamins," I said, letting panic creep into my voice. "I can't stop shaking." She was at my door in 3 minutes, still in her pajamas, concern painted on her face like makeup. "Show me," she demanded. I held out my hands, trembling violently, not from drugs but from barely controlled fury. She grabbed my wrist, checking my pulse. "Your heart rate is too high. We need to get you to Dr. Morrison." "No," I said, pulling away. "No doctors? I just need to adjust the dosage, maybe?" She studied me, and I saw calculation behind the concern. "Did you take anything else? Anything not prescribed?" "Just the vitamins and the sleeping pills. Everything you and Dr. Morrison recommended." She relaxed slightly. In her mind, I was still compliant, Helen, still following the script. "Let me call him," she said, pulling out her phone. While she spoke to Morrison in hushed tones, I palmed one of the flash drives. When she turned back, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the perfect picture of medical distress. "He wants to see you this afternoon. I'll drive you." "Patricia," I said, letting tears fill my eyes. "What's happening to me? Sometimes I feel like I'm losing myself, like I don't know who I am anymore." "Oh, honey." She pulled me into a hug that felt like being embraced by a snake. "You're just overwhelmed. Too many memories, too much grief. Dr. Morrison will help. He always does." Over her shoulder, I saw Emma's car pulling into my driveway. The daughter who wasn't my daughter, coming to check on the mother who wasn't her mother. All of us playing roles in someone else's tragedy. Emma entered with her own key, her face a practice mask of daughterly concern. 26 years old, according to the story. which meant she'd been 3 when she was supposedly born into my manufactured life. Except she hadn't been. She'd been recruited at 22, fresh from college, as Thomas had written. 4 years of playing my daughter. 4 years of lies I'd believed were love. Mom, Patricia called. She said you're having a bad reaction. That word, Mom? How many times had she said it? How many times had I felt warmth at hearing it? Even now, knowing the truth, my treacherous heart responded to her presence. They'd done their job well, programming me to love this stranger. I'm okay, I said, pulling away from Patricia's embrace. Just shaky. Emma knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in hers. Her skin was warm, her touch gentle. Real human contact, even if the relationship was fiction. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception, tells that would reveal the actress beneath. But she was good. They'd trained her well. Your hands are freezing, she said. Have you eaten anything? I couldn't keep anything down. Patricia and Emma exchanged a look. Quick, professional, the kind of glance between handlers discussing an asset. How had I never seen it before? I'll make you some toast, Emma said, moving to the kitchen with the ease of someone who belonged there. Because in the fiction of Helen Morrison's life, she did belong there. While she worked, I watched Patricia typing on her phone. Reporting to Mitchell, probably. The subject is displaying symptoms, increased surveillance, prepare for potential containment. But I had my own plans now. I need some air, I announced, standing unsteadily. You should rest, Patricia said immediately. Just the porch. I feel trapped inside. Another exchange of glances. Then Emma said, I'll come with you. We sat on the porch swing, the same one where Helen Morrison had spent countless evenings, never knowing she was performing for an audience. Patricia watched from the kitchen window, pretending to clean up. Mom, Emma started, then stopped. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Guilt? Regret? Or was I just hoping to see humanity in my captors? What is it, sweetheart? The endearment came automatically. Muscle memory of a relationship that had never existed. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you'd made different choices? The question felt loaded, dangerous. Was she testing me? Or was she expressing her own doubts about the role she played? Everyone wonders that, I said carefully. But we can't change the past. But what if you could? What if you could wake up tomorrow and be someone completely different? I turned to look at her directly. Are you trying to tell me something? She went pale, glanced toward the window where Patricia was no longer pretending not to watch. No, I worry about you. Since Dad died, you've been so isolated. Maybe you should travel, see new places, meet new people. Travel. The one thing the notebook had specifically said to discourage. Was Emma going off script? Or was this another test? Patricia thinks I should stay close to home. Stay with what's familiar. Patricia doesn't control your life, Mom. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning neither of us could acknowledge. Then Emma's phone buzzed. She read the message, and her expression shifted back to professional concern. Dr. Morrison can see you in an hour. Patricia will drive you. The trap was closing. Morrison would increase my medications, adjust my programming, ensure I forgot what I'd remembered. I had 1 hour to escape 20 years of captivity. I need to shower and change, I said. Back inside, I moved through the motions of preparation while my mind raced. The flash drives were hidden, one in the attic, one in my pocket, one ready to mail. But getting to Marcus Wade meant leaving the house without surveillance, breaking the pattern they'd established for 2 decades. In my bedroom, I opened the window, 2 stories down to the garden, but there was a trellis, probably strong enough to hold me. Rebecca Chen would have climbed it without hesitation. Helen Morrison was terrified. But I wasn't Helen Morrison anymore. I turned on the shower, locked the bathroom door, then returned to the bedroom. Through the gap under the door, I could hear Patricia and Emma talking in low voices downstairs, discussing me, planning my next cage. The credit cards in my wallet would be tracked. The car would have GPS. My phone was definitely monitored. But Thomas had hidden cash in his old workshop. I'd found it years ago and never touched it, assuming it was emergency money he'd kept from his fictional salary. Now, I understood it differently. He'd been preparing for this moment, for my escape. The trellis held, barely. I dropped into the garden, staying low, moving through the gate into the alley. Every step away from that house felt like surfacing from deep water, like breathing after being held under. But I couldn't run blindly. They'd find me within hours if I did. I needed to be smart, strategic. Rebecca Chen had been a planner, a documenter. I needed to think like her. The public library was 6 blocks away. No cameras in the stacks, public computers that didn't require identification. I walked steadily, but not suspiciously. A woman out for morning exercise. Normal, invisible. At the library, I found Marcus Wade's contact information. Still at the Washington Post, still investigating corporate corruption. I created a new email account and typed quickly. That muscle memory Thomas had worried about serving me now. Mr. Wade, I'm the missing witness from the Riverside Terminal 1 investigation. I have the evidence that disappeared in 2001. Mitchell Vance had me erased, but I'm awake now. I need your help. I attached a sample of the documents, enough to prove legitimacy without revealing everything. Then I gave him a meeting location, Pioneer Courthouse Square, noon, 3 days from now. Public, crowded, safe. As I hit send, I felt the weight of 20 years lifting. Rebecca Chen had just announced her resurrection. The walk back was harder. Every person seemed like potential surveillance. Every car might be them, coming to collect their malfunctioning asset. But I made it to my street, slipped through backyards, and climbed back up the trellis, just as Patricia's voice called from downstairs. Helen, we need to leave for your appointment. I turned off the shower, unlocked the door, emerged in my robe, looking appropriately medicated and confused. I don't feel well, I said. That's why we're going to see Dr. Morrison, Patricia said. But there was suspicion in her eyes. Had she noticed something? A trace of dirt from the garden? A leaf in my hair? The drive to Morrison's office felt like being transported to my own execution. Emma followed in her car, boxing me in. Patricia kept glancing at me, studying my face. You seem different today, she said. I feel different, like something's changing inside me. That's just the medication adjustment period. Dr. Morrison will fix it. Dr. Morrison's office occupied the top floor of a medical building that Geometric Solutions probably owned. His receptionist smiled at me with the same practiced warmth as Emma, another actor in this elaborate production. Morrison himself looked older, grayer, but his eyes remained sharp, calculating. The man who'd spent 20 years fine-tuning my chemical prison. Helen, he said warmly, Patricia tells me you're having some difficulties. I sat in the familiar chair, letting Helen Morrison's muscle memory take over. Hands folded, ankles crossed, the posture of a compliant patient. "I've been having strange dreams," I said. "About water, about drowning." His expression didn't change, but his pupils dilated slightly. "Fear, excitement. Dreams can be very disturbing. Tell me more." "Someone's holding me under. I can't breathe. And there's a voice saying something about Terminal 1. Now his composure cracked. He glanced at Patricia, who'd insisted on being in the room. "Terminal 1? That's very specific. Do you know what that means?" I shook my head, playing confused. "Should I? It feels important, but I can't place it." He was already reaching for his prescription pad. "I think we need to adjust your medications. These intrusive thoughts are concerning." "No." The word surprised all of us, me included. Helen Morrison never said no to Dr. Morrison. "I'm sorry," he said. "No more medications. They make me foggy. I want to think clearly." "Helen, that's the illness talking. You need—" "My name," I said slowly, "is Rebecca Chen." The silence that followed was absolute. Patricia's hand moved to her purse. Was she armed? Morrison's fingers hovered over his desk drawer. "You're confused," he said carefully. "Your name is Helen Morrison. You're Thomas Morrison's widow. My sister-in-law." "Your sister-in-law," I repeated, tasting the lie. "Is that how you justified it? Keeping me in the family? Keeping me close? Keeping me controlled?" Morrison's hand slipped into the drawer. Patricia stood, positioning herself between me and the door. But I wasn't trying to run. Not anymore. "I sent the evidence," I said calmly. "Everything Thomas saved. The Riverside files, the financial records, the documentation of what you did to me. It's gone to people you don't own, people Mitchell can't buy." "You're having a psychotic break," Morrison said, but his voice shook. "Patricia, call the psychiatric ward. We need to admit her for her own safety." 20 years, I continued. 20 years of pills and lies and performances. But Thomas was reducing the doses, wasn't he? That's why you had him killed. Patricia had her phone out, but she was calling Mitchell, not the hospital. I could hear his voice, sharp and angry. "She knows," Patricia said simply. "Yes, she found it. I don't know how." Morrison pulled a syringe from the drawer. "This will help you calm down, Helen." "Rebecca," I corrected. "And if you inject me with that, I've instructed the journalist to release everything immediately. But if you let me walk out of here, you have 3 days to run." It was a partial lie. Marcus Wade had the sample, but not everything. The full evidence was still on the flash drives, but they didn't know that. "You don't remember who you are," Morrison insisted, approaching with the syringe. "You're confused, sick. I remember everything." Another lie, but delivered with enough conviction to make him pause. The grand jury testimony I was supposed to give. The 2 workers who died, Marcus Alvarez and Derek Chen. No relation, despite the shared surname. The toxic waste you knew about, but covered up. The millions you made while families suffered. Patricia ended her call. "He's coming." "Mitchell's coming here?" Morrison looked panicked. She can't be here when he arrives." "So let me go," I said. "We can't do that either." Patricia's mask had finally slipped completely, revealing the cold calculation underneath. "You know too much. You've always known too much." Then we're at an impasse. Emma appeared in the doorway, out of breath. "The police are downstairs. Someone called in a wellness check for Helen Morrison." They all turned to stare at me. "I made a second call from the library," I admitted. Told them I was being held against my will by people claiming to be my family. They'll want to see me, verify I'm safe, and I'll either walk out with them or I'll tell them everything. It was a desperate bluff. The police might be owned by Mitchell too, but the fear in Morrison's eyes suggested at least some of them weren't. "Mom," Emma said, and for the first time, her voice sounded genuinely pleading. "Don't do this. You don't understand what they'll do." "What who will do?" I asked. "Say it out loud. Name them. Or can't you even do that without permission?" A knock at the office door. "Dr. Morrison? Portland Police? We need to speak with Helen Morrison." Morrison looked at Patricia, who nodded slightly. He hid the syringe, composed himself, and opened the door. 2 officers stood there, young, probably clean, not yet bought. "Mrs. Morrison?" The female officer addressed me directly. "Are you here of your own free will?" "No," I said clearly. "I want to leave, and they won't let me." "That's not—" "She's confused," Morrison started. "I'm her doctor. She's having a psychiatric episode." "Ma'am, would you like to come with us?" the male officer asked. "Yes." I stood, and Patricia grabbed my arm. "Helen, please, think about Emma. Think about what you're doing to your daughter." I looked at Emma, this stranger I'd loved like my own child. She was crying now, real tears or just another performance I'd never know. "I don't have a daughter," I said. "Helen Morrison had a daughter. But I'm Rebecca Chen." The officers exchanged glances. One of them spoke into his radio, requesting backup and a psychiatric evaluation team. "Ma'am, are you feeling confused about your identity?" the female officer asked gently. "No, I'm feeling clear about it for the first time in 20 years. Morrison stepped forward. "Officers, I have her medical records here. Years of treatment for dissociative disorder. This is a symptom of her condition." "Forged records," I countered. "Check when they started. 2001, right? Right after Rebecca Chen disappeared." Something in my certainty must have convinced them, or maybe they just wanted to avoid a scene. Either way, they positioned themselves between me and my captors. "We're going to take Mrs. Sorry, what name would you prefer?" "Rebecca. Rebecca Chen. We're going to take Ms. Chen to the station to sort this out." Patricia made one last attempt. "She's dangerous to herself. She needs hospitalization." "That's for the professionals to determine," the officer said firmly. As they escorted me out, I heard Patricia on the phone again. "We have a containment breach. Yes, full breach. Authorization code 77 Alpha. In the elevator, I memorized the officers' names from their badges. Rodriguez and Harper. Clean cops, or at least clean enough. They led me through the building lobby, past curious onlookers, into the clear morning air. "Miss Chen," Officer Rodriguez said quietly as we reached the patrol car. "That name, Rebecca Chen. You were the Riverside witness." I stopped walking. "You know about that?" "My training officer worked that case. Said the witness disappeared, probably killed. Said it was the biggest cover-up he'd ever seen." "I didn't disappear," I said. "I was erased." He nodded slowly, understanding more than I'd expected. "We're not taking you to the station. Too many people there who might... Well, is there somewhere safe we can take you?" I thought of the flash drives, the evidence, the meeting with Marcus Wade in 3 days. "The Washington Post has a Portland office. Take me there." As we drove, I watched the city pass by with new eyes. Not Helen Morrison's medicated limited view, but Rebecca Chen's sharp awareness. Every building could hide surveillance. Every car could carry Mitchell's people. But I was out. After 20 years, I was finally out of that house, that life, that script. The post office was small, just a few reporters covering Pacific Northwest stories. But one of them knew Marcus Wade, called him immediately. Within an hour, I was on a secure video call, showing him the evidence, telling him everything. "This is huge," he said. "Bigger than just Riverside. If we can prove they've been holding you against your will for 20 years, drugging you, controlling you, this is kidnapping, false imprisonment, conspiracy on a massive scale. Can you protect me until the story breaks? We'll get you to DC tonight. Private flight, security team. You'll be safe." Safe? I'd forgotten what that word meant. As we prepared to leave for the airport, my phone rang. Emma. I almost didn't answer, but something made me accept the call. "Rebecca," she said, using my real name for the first time. "I know you hate me, and you should, but I need you to know not. All of it was acting. I did care. I do care." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" "Mitchell Vance is my uncle. Patricia's my mother. They said you were dangerous, mentally ill, that we were helping you have a normal life. I was young. I believed them. By the time I realized the truth, I was too deep in, too afraid to stop. And now? Now they're going to run. Mitchell's already moving money offshore. They'll disappear, start over somewhere else. But Rebecca, be careful. Mitchell has a final contingency. If he can't contain you, he'll eliminate you. Don't trust anyone except Wade. Why are you telling me this?" A pause. "Because for 4 years, you were the only real parent I ever had, even if it was all built on lies." She hung up. I deleted her number, deleted Patricia's, deleted every contact from Helen Morrison's phone. Then I threw the phone in the trash. Officer Rodriguez had stayed with me, unofficial protection. "Ready?" he asked. "I've been ready for 20 years." The private plane was small, but secure. As Portland disappeared below us, I felt the last threads of Helen Morrison's life snapping one by one. That constructed identity was falling away like old paint, revealing Rebecca Chen underneath, damaged but unbroken. Marcus Wade met me at the DC airport with a team of lawyers and federal investigators, real ones this time, not bought and paid for. "The story breaks tomorrow," he said. "Mitchell Vance and his entire network are finished. Will they be arrested? Warrants are being issued tonight. 20 years of false imprisonment, fraud, conspiracy, murder. They'll never see daylight again." But when the FBI raided Mitchell's compound the next morning, it was empty. Patricia's house, too. Even Dr. Morrison had vanished, leaving only empty pill bottles and shredded documents. Emma had told the truth. They'd run. The story broke anyway. The woman who was erased, 20 years of corporate captivity, ran on every major outlet. The evidence was overwhelming. Geometric solutions collapsed within days. The Riverside development was finally investigated properly. Families received compensation, though nothing could bring back the dead. I testified before Congress about the need for better witness protection, about the corruption that allowed corporations to buy federal agents. I reclaimed my name legally, though Rebecca Chen felt as foreign on my tongue as Helen Morrison once had. But Mitchell Vance was never found. Neither was Patricia or Morrison. They'd had 20 years to plan their escape, just as they'd had 20 years to plan my captivity. I live under protection now, real protection this time. I wake up every morning and take no pills, make my own choices, speak with my own voice. It's been 6 months since I escaped. 6 months of remembering how to be Rebecca Chen. Sometimes I dream about Emma, the daughter who wasn't my daughter, and wonder if any part of our connection was real. Sometimes I dream about Thomas, the captor who tried to free me, and feel grief I'm not entitled to feel. But mostly, I dream about water not drowning anymore, but floating, surfacing, breathing. The notebook still exists, evidence in a case that may never be prosecuted. But I've written my own notebook now, my own script. Every page is my choice, my words, my truth. They stole 20 years of my voice. They scripted my silence, my compliance, my entire existence. But silence, I've learned, can be broken. Scripts can be burned. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very strong, you can write your own ending. Mine isn't happy. How could it be? But it's mine. Rebecca Chen's. The woman who was erased but refused to disappear completely. The woman who stayed silent for 20 years until she remembered she had something to say. And I'll keep saying it. Keep telling this story until Mitchell Vance hears it, wherever he's hiding. Until he knows that everything he built on my silence has crumbled. He wrote my life for 20 years, but I'm writing the rest of it myself. Thank you for listening to my story. Sometimes the truth needs witnesses, and today, you've been mine.